Now, let's assume that we have a few more patients. So besides those 10 patients we talked about before, we now actually have 25 patients. And we can see that their ages tend to be a little bit higher than the first 10 patients we had. In fact, now we want to categorize the age of the patient into these new categories. So now instead of four, we have 6 age categories in which we want to categorize our patients. And you can see that if you wanted to use the nested if function, it would be a possibility, but it becomes very cumbersome. It could be leading to a lot of mistakes. So one thing that we can do, instead of using the nested if function, we can use the ifs function, which is if with an s at the end, and it is a bit different than the simple if function. So to use the ifs function, we start off just like any other function with the equal sign. We write the name of that function, we open parentheses, and now in the case of the ifs function, it's going to ask for multiple logical tests. Okay. It will also ask for the output if the test is true. So it's going to ask for a logical test. If the test is true, that is going to be the output. If the test is false, it's going to move on to the next test. So we can start off by making a relative reference to cell B3, which contains the age of the patient. And we're going to start off in the same order that we have here. So our first logical test would be asking if the age of the patient is younger than 6. If so, we want the output to be 0 to 5 months. We close quotation marks, and then by a comma, we move on now to the second logical test. We don't need to write what to do if that first logical test is not true. It is going to automatically move on to the next logical test. The next one will also make a relative reference to that same cell, B3. Now we're asking if it is smaller than 12. If it is smaller than 12, well, we already know that the first logical test was false, so the age of the patient has to be at least 6 months, and at the maximum, in case that one is true, 11 months. We can move on to the third logical test, which is again making relative reference to the age of the patient, this time asking if the patient is younger than 24. If so, the age of the patient is going to be between 12 and 23 months. Next one would be asking if the age of the patient is younger than 60 months, which is equivalent to 5 years of age. If so, age of the patient is going to be between 24 and 59 months. And then we can move on to the next two. Keep in mind that 10 years of age is equivalent to 120 months. So B3 smaller than 120 months. If so, the age of the patient is going to be between 5 and 9 years. And finally, we can ask if the age of the patient, so B3, is smaller than 15 years of age. 15 years is 180 months. We close quotation marks, we close parentheses, and when we press enter, we will have the age category for each one of our patients, just as we scroll down our formula bar. It is very important that to use either the ifs or the nested if function, the age of the patients needs to all be in the same unit. So you cannot have some patients aged in month, other patients age written down in years. You have to have all of them in the same unit. Before we finalize, it is important that we tell Excel that the next time Excel faces these values, 0 to 5 months, all the way up to 10 to 14 years, it has to know that this is the ascending order from smallest to largest. To do that, you just write down the age categories you have used, and we press Ctrl C. We come here on the data ribbon. We find a sort button. We click on the sort button. A pop-up menu will appear. We don't need to pay much attention to it except for the order here. In order, we open the drop-down menu and we select Custom List. A new pop-up window appears. On the list entries, we just press Ctrl V to paste our values. Once we have our values, you just have to click on Add. And now you can see that the custom list has been added. We click on OK, OK again, and then that's it. When we're making pivot tables, Excel will automatically recognize that this is the order of the variables in which you want them to show.